I'm here with Mirza from Rose Garden Consulting. Today we're going to be talking about new business, growth, sales, prospecting, all that good stuff from the perspective of agency sales, ad agencies, digital agencies, service companies looking to essentially improve their sales performance, their business development program. So I brought Ali, who's a subject matter expert, certainly when it comes to sales, brings a lot of process, a lot of great expertise to the equation. Ali, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Some of you may or may not know me. As Robby eloquently put it, my name is Ali. I run a sales consultancy, and we're focused primarily on helping companies scale their sales teams, build processes, be very systematized, and essentially grow their revenue. I'm a firm believer there's no such thing as a born salesperson. The only thing that are born are baby boys and baby girls. Salespeople are trained, they're taught, and if you can follow a system and a process, you will surely scale. And that's not to say that you should sound like a scripted robot. Just have a conversation, be personal. So that'll give you some insight as to how I think and who I am.
Yeah, love it. Well, let's kind of start right from the top, kind of based on what you said, right? So bringing process scalability to sales. And I think when we talk about agencies, oftentimes inside of an agency, you really don't have a dedicated salesperson, especially with small and even medium-sized agencies. As agencies increase in size, they might have a VP of new business or somebody that really carries that mantle. But I know firsthand, a lot of agencies, love your coffee, by the way, it's all about the Benjamins.
If you're not making money, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's true. Got to drink it. But a lot of agencies don't even really have a role in place where somebody's focus is sales and biz dev. And apologies for the fire that's erupting down the street of good old Winston-Salem. But Ali, what do you think about that? I mean, if you have an agency that, let's say, has 15, 20 employees, and you have the principals that are essentially carrying the mantle of sales, they're responding to maybe RFPs. They say that their agency sales is really mostly from word of mouth, which we think is probably code for we're not really doing anything. We're waiting for opportunities to flow in. Where does an agency start? They don't have a sales guy, just a principal or a couple principals that recognize, we need to be a little more proactive. We need a sales program. We need to be doing something. Where do you start?
I think the first thing you have to do is just stop, right? I mean, I think a lot of times, when I'm asked a question like that, I think the instant response is, well, first thing you gotta do is this. And then the second thing is this. And then I think the first thing you really gotta do is stop and just kind of take a step back, right? Because no matter what you do, you're probably going to make the wrong decision because you're in a reactive mode. Rarely do people start their sales team because they're in the right position. They start their sales team because of one of a few different reasons. Number one, my sales are bad. My numbers are bad. My revenue is bad. I can't do it anymore. I'm not good at it. Let me hire someone to do it. Terrible idea. Okay. If you can't do it, good luck trying to get someone else to do it. Number two, we're growing. We're growing really fast. Everything is going really great. Let's upset the balance and rock the boat by throwing a salesperson in this, and somehow this salesperson is going to take the baton and carry it forward. So that also is a bad idea because if not to say that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's not one of those situations, but you're probably not going to handle that transition diligently, right? Because if you're growing, you've got business coming in the door, and everything is going great. You're probably busy. So, trying to have a transitionary period without thinking it through perfectly, probably not a good idea. And then kind of the third one that comes to top of mind is you've kind of plateaued. Sales aren't bad. They're consistent enough where, your bills are paid, but you're also kind of day in and day out thinking, is this why I got into running my own agency? Is this kind of what my life is supposed to be like? Regardless of whether it's 4 hours a day or 14 hours a day, there's a certain level of consistency to it. And I would hazard a guess that most agency owners, when they first got into the business, regardless of whether the times are good or bad, those were the exciting times. And maybe some of that excitement is now leaving you. So my first advice is just kind of stop. take a second to try and really do exactly what you tell your clients to do, right? I mean, if your clients say,
but Bali, that's so hard, right? I'm hearing firsthand from agency principals that, yeah, I mean, they know, and they're masters of branding, positioning, and messaging, and having a vision and clarity around that vision, which are all, ingredients to being successful eventually on the new business front. But it's like pulling teeth. There's a difficulty when it comes to, even for agencies, working on their own business as opposed to clients. Why do you think that is? Why do agency principals get sort of trapped inside of their agency, unable to kind of see from another perspective, as well as kind of move forward, move to the next goalpost?
Well, I mean, it's the cobbler in the shoes, that old analogy, right? I mean, it's the reason why my boys are well fed. I think what it really boils down to is, we're just too close to the trees to see the forest. And here's what it boils down to. It's a lot of unconscious competence. They're good at it, and if you try and get them to explain it to you, they're not very good at that. It's like the centipede and the legs.
Talk about it.
Sorry?
They just do it, don't know how to talk about it? Is that what you
mean? Right. And what ends up happening is when they have to do it for a client, when they have to do it for someone else, they have to sit down and become very diligent and start from the basics, from step 1, step 2, and really go through the process. That's why their work, for some of them, is good. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat and say everyone does great work, because we all know there's some people that do terrible work. But
for them, because they give us all room. Yeah.
Exactly. But that's in theory is why some people do good work, and kind of how some of these ideas come about. But sometimes we put ourselves up on a pedestal and think, I'm too good for that. I don't need to go back to step 1. No. That's why I say first thing you need to do is stop. And if you stop and really become very intentional about, well, what's been working, what's not been working, you'll realize that you can't answer those questions. And then hopefully that's enough of a kick to the teeth to bring you back to step 1 and kind of humble you. That's why I say stop and now start at step 1. And the first thing, when you're at step 1, kind of what you really want to do and kind of ask yourself is, okay, well, what has worked for me in the past? And not, well, word of mouth is work. Well, no, don't be so high level. Why has word of mouth worked for you? And I think that if you really look at it, it's like, well, it's because of this project, XYZ project that I did. I did a project for Coca-Cola, and everyone loved it, and they came to me. So, well, hang on, how did I get that project with Coke? And just keep asking, start with why, or just, reduce to ridiculous and get to the very core. Well, what happened was I went to a networking event and I met this guy, and then he introduced me to Robby. Robby set me up with Coke, and, XYZ happened. And so now you're getting to the root of what happened. And I'm not saying go now back to the networking event, but write it down. Write down that, okay, networking event, and I did X, Y, and Z at this networking event. I spoke at the event. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to tell you to go to networking events, because in my opinion, I almost never go to networking events. Some of them are good. Most of them are just a total meat market full of...
Especially if they're called a networking event. That's kind
exactly.
of that alert. You want to go network when it's not called networking, right?
Exactly. Most networking...
One is really... assessing your activities, your sales biz dev activities to date? Is that what you're saying? Just getting a clear sense of what's the rhyme and reason that resulted in the sales that we've experienced to this date. So as much as somebody could say, like you say, hey, well, it's just word of mouth, Coca-Cola fell into my lap. No, there was a rhyme or reason there. There was a path. So you want to kind of look back and just kind of chart out those different various paths to essentially sales conversions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the most important thing about that is, have the whiteboarding exercise, right? I mean, and that's so important in what you do for your clients. Do it for yourself, because what ends up happening is either your patterns are going to emerge, or when it's up here and you're doing it all solo for yourself, you're gonna skip steps, and you're gonna say that, oh, well, you know what, this happened, that happened, and before you know it, you summed up, an 8-month cycle into 3 or 4 steps. Well, we all know that really didn't happen. When you start whiteboarding it, that forces you to become very intentional about each and every step and how it got from one to the next. And once you start doing that, you will start, patterns will emerge, and things that you weren't taking into consideration will come about. And so that will first start, that will start the engine moving. And really kind of what the end goal of that is to really figure out what works and what doesn't work. And then what you're supposed to do is document all of that. Get it off of the whiteboard and put it onto a Word document, put it onto a PDF, put it down somewhere. And that is kind of step number one. And that is what's really going to help you in painting the picture of is what's working, what's not working, where do we need to spend our time, where do we need to stop wasting our time. And if you do bring somebody on, you know, they've now got something. I'm not saying that's a great playbook, but it's something better than go sell. Right, and that's 90% of the training that's given to, you know, because everyone wants to bring in that guy that's got the expertise in, oh, he's been 40 years in the industry, he knows everybody. If he's 40 years in the industry and he knows everybody's got all the contacts, why did he start up his own agency if he can really sell? I mean, it doesn't exist, man. That guy just hustling you for another 8 months of an $80,000 salary. That's just not going to happen.
So if your first step is really, you know, assessing where you're at, documenting, you know, currently what you're doing, right? So you have a benchmark essentially. It sounds a little bit like, I don't know, almost like if you're in digital marketing, step number one is to set up and then pour through analytics, right? Yeah. Get a sense for, okay, like outside of, you know, my personal opinion, here's the data. Here's what's working, here's what isn't working. And now I have a clearer view of maybe the path forward. Is that a pretty accurate comparison?
Absolutely. I mean, I've heard it referred to as an audit, assessment. I mean, whatever it is, whatever fancy word you want to call it, but ultimately what it boils down to is, you know, look inwardly first, and before you start trying to go outward.
Let's give some parameters to agency principals that want to, you know, maybe dive in and at least start with some of this assessment audit phase kind of on their own, right? Get a clear sense of what they're doing and document that. How much time should they pour into this step, this process? How much time should they give them as well? You know, I know for a lot of agency principals, you know, accountability is often needed as far as just keeping things on track. There's a lot of stuff going on in an agency. So how much time should an agency principal give themselves to kind of follow through on this step? And then how much actual time should they set aside for the process of whiteboarding, getting it on paper? How many people should they involve? Anybody that's touching sales? What are your thoughts on that?
I think
questions wrapped into one.
Yeah, no, there's a few questions there. So I think the first part, how much time should you give in executing it? I believe less is more, because this is one of those things where, you know, we can plan till we're blue in the face, and until Mike Tyson's, you know, saying, right, everyone's got a game plan until you get punched in the face type of thing. You know, we can plan and scope things out and figure them out, but until we actually execute on them, we'll never really know if it works or how well it works. So I think that you know, kind of the first thing is less is more. Plan quickly, get it to the, you know, kind of the MVP stage where it's like, okay, this is something reasonable enough that I can now go. Remember, I'm suggesting you do this before you go to hire somebody, right? Become a little bit intentional about what you're doing, right? So if you say, hey, you know what, within the next 6 months, I want to hire somebody, do this now, do it right away, so that when you do bring somebody on, you've got something that's vetted and validated, and say, hey, look, I've been working this little system for the past 6 months. It's been working wonders. See, this is where the baton, passing of the baton will actually make sense. So I think that first exercise of, you know, kind of doing that audit, a day or so, you know, bring in the appropriate leadership people. I would say if you have a salesperson, it's tough, because there's certain salespeople that you do want in on it, and there's certain salespeople you do not want in on it, right? And so that's a little bit of a trickier question to ask, and you have to know your people. But I think that, you know, founders and people that are going to be on the be along for the journey in the long term should definitely be in there, because there's not always a one right answer, and sometimes it comes into a situation of, well, what business do you want to be in? I get a lot of shit all the time for I hope I'm allowed to swear, but I get a lot of flack all the time about you know, well, hey, consultants, if they could do it, they would, you know, they would do it themselves. And it's just like, look, man, I'm comfortable in what I do. I know what I do. But it really boils down into what business do you want to be in, right? Because people are always telling me, well, if you're good at it, you should do this, or you should do this, or you should do this. And it's like, I could do a lot of things. There's a lot of things that can make money, but it's what business do I want to be in? What do I really enjoy? Right? What would I do for free, right? And well, unfortunately, I got to pay some bills, so let me charge for it, type of thing. So that's why it's very important to have people that are going to be there for the long term. with your company, so they can scope the vision of what type of business and what type of clients you want to bring long term. Just because they're profitable doesn't mean those are the ones that you want to work with. And also that there's the other side of that is, just because they're big doesn't mean they're profitable. I know lots of people that take on lots of agencies that have taken on big name clients that have basically raked them over the coals. And I mean, Robby, you know this. I mean, where they've had to get rid of some of their smaller clients and just to take on the big logo, and then they get on the big logo, and yeah, it's cash flowing because you don't know how to run your books, but
there's a lot of short-sighted decision making. Certainly in the agency world, getting an account, staffing up for that account going away, moving other. Yes, that's. But with medium, big size agencies more than anybody. Yeah.
But even in the interim, some of them on the interim are not profitable. If you actually really look at, and I'm not even talking about it on opportunity costs. I'm talking about from a perspective of, the resources that you have to attach as a result of that project that were not a direct link up, right? Sometimes you have to staff up office management, and you didn't consider that when replying to the RFP, and sometimes you have to get tech that you didn't think that you needed or whatnot.
Right. And always necessarily like a cost of good as much, or a subcontractor service as it is. Well, our business is scaling, so we need these areas to work.
Exactly.
I want to talk with you about something that is very popular, I think, with a lot of growth consultants, specifically in the agency world. There's a lot of talk about this. It's something that I've encountered a ton, in sort of the day-to-day agency matchmaking business, and now doing more coaching consulting with agencies, helping them kind of reach the next level. And what that is I think we touched on a little bit in the beginning, but I don't want to miss out on your perspective on it. So what it is this desire for, again, this new business program, right? So you have this first step of let's assess, let's document, let's essentially get started with a playbook, put it in writing, and allow us to have a platform for actually developing out a better business development program, right?
Right.
What I've seen though is a lot of agencies that are looking to solve their business problems with new business, or want a new business program when really they need a business plan, or want to do more prospecting, or get into pricing strategy and create more profitable engagements, but their positioning is poor. Their positioning is not up to par. What is your perspective, particularly as a sales consultant, coming in to solve sales problems, help solve those problems, help show the way, guide the way, when you're up against maybe more systemic issues or business issues or positioning? How does that sort of flow into this? Is that part of that assessment phase? I mean, are you just looking at sales biz dev activities? Or are you also looking at my brand, my site, my positioning, if I'm an agency, do I have a specialty that will make it easier to target new business? When does that kind of come along in the process?
The short answer is it's already in there, right? I mean, it's so kind of answering this from my perspective is, when I engage in an assessment with an agency, one of the first things that I look at is kind of the whole ecosystem, right? If I because I'm not in the agency, I don't run an ad agency, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if I was to contract you and say, hey, Robby, I want you to be my ad agency on record, or whatever the case may be, or do some work for me, I'm gonna judge your brand. I mean, I'm gonna say, okay, well, what's going on? And if I think that your brand is not up to par, you can have literally the best salesperson, got me in a headlock and just squeezing until I'm not gonna say yes, because I'm gonna be like, you can't even do it for yourself. How are you gonna do it for me? The sales cycle will be long, because I'm constantly trying to say no, and when your salesperson is not taking it. So it's absolutely gonna
evidence of this. In terms of when you document the sales processes that are happening, the clients that close, the clients that didn't close, the reasons why, the objections, you're saying that there's going to be enough evidence to be able to sort of diagnose, okay, this is bigger than maybe just prospecting or generating opportunities. This is bigger than our ability to convert. It looks like we have, maybe some other issues that are affecting this. Is that
business is not done in a vacuum. Everything is taken into consideration: your brand, your messaging, who you are, what kind of little like personal, like what was it? The old saying about how, I don't know if it's an old wives' tale or whatever, but like whether it's a manager before they hired somebody, or whether it was someone who before they hired a client before they decided to sign on with somebody, would always take the people out for dinner and then see how they ate, right? If they were a messy eater, if they were a good eater, right? Whatever the case may be, how they treated the wait staff, things like that. Like, so everything is taken into consideration, right? All the time. You're if you're walking, you're being judged, period. And understand that. I mean, and if you don't like it, then sorry. But that's the fact of life. And whether someone's consciously judging you or unconsciously judging you, they are judging you. And so to kind of answer, to go back to the original question, is everything is taken into consideration, and you can have a great biz dev sales program process, but if you don't take care of home first, tough nuts. You're probably closed more deals than you would have without that sales process, but you're still not going to be reaching maximum efficiency. You're not going to be reaching where kind of the bar, your maximum potential, where you should be. And so, your good sales processes can only compensate so much for bad internal processes and bad other things, because then what ends up happening is just as quickly as you bring them in, just as quickly as they leave. And then you have to constantly engage in that, right? I mean, sales is not all about how many more new can we bring in. We definitely want to bring in new, but there's a certain element of what I try and help my clients with is how can we keep the existing and grow the existing as well, right? Because that's also very important. It's far more economical to grow an existing account than it is to bring in a new one quicker, and it's more profitable to grow them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So do you have a sense for, I don't know, I guess priorities, order of operation, after, I guess some of that is based on the assessment, right? To figure out what are the glaring weaknesses, what are the areas, the opportunities, and then how do they sort of rank? But looking at it from the higher level, most of your assessments, some of the output that, is received from that process, what is typically kind of the more low hanging fruit that you might approach earlier on? Is it definitely, well, if the house isn't in order, that has to be taken care of before we really move to anything else? Do you help steward that process, or is that more motivating the client that, hey, I can't help you on the biz dev front until you help yourself on the business front? How does that look?
Yeah. So, so it's a couple things, right? If I come in and I see that your house is not in order, you're not going to, I'm not going to charge you to tell you to clean your nose and clean your room type of thing. That's not what I do. I'll tell you need to do it, but I'm not going to do it for you, because that's not my area of specialty. And I can say, look, I can build you the sales process, but until you do this, it's probably not going to do you a whole heck of a lot of good. So do that first, and then come talk to me once you're ready. That's how that conversation goes. Because I'm not going to come in here and tell you to do all that other stuff, because there's other people that are better at it, and ultimately that's just more of an effort thing. And if you don't want to put in the effort, why am I going to, type of thing. So, but I think that the first thing, assuming that their house is in order, or once they get their house in order, I think the first thing that we always look at is twofold. Number one, if we're going out, or I guess it's simultaneously these two things that we look at is as far as going outside, it's really trying to determine who our ideal client profile is, and a lot of that has to do with who have we already helped, who have we already done great work from, because inevitably if let's just say I'm great in food and beverage, right, because I did something with Coca-Cola, so let me go and approach another client like that, because inevitably they're going to ask for case studies and, oh, how are you as good as you are? Oh, let me show you. This is the work I did with Coca-Cola, type of thing, right? So that makes that a lot easier, because you've already navigated that landscape. There's a lot of learnings that you have that you can draw from, and to definitely speed that up. So that's kind of what we do, is going outbound is identifying our ideal client profile, and then kind of creating the messaging and the approach and strategy as to how we're going to get there. There's going to be certain clients that we're going to be going after where email is the best tactic. And then there's going to be certain clients that where we need to approach them at a trade show, networking event, whatever the case may be, because this person's probably not going to answer our email. Or maybe we just need to show up and be direct, or whatever the case may be. But that's kind of the outside strategy. And that's, what we look at deploying right away, because we want to bring in new money. The second thing that we want to look at is also from a perspective of, who do you already have? Who have you done business with in the past? Who is in your pipeline that you have engaged and spoken to but haven't taken a check from? And who are you taking money from that we can grow? Are you taking $100,000 from Coca-Cola? Because if you're taking $100,000 from Coca-Cola, I'm telling you, you are severely underserving them, right? Because I mean, I don't want to make a fool out of myself and try and guess what Coca-Cola's ad budget is, but I'm sure it's a lot more than $100,000, right? It's a lot of money. So obviously, you know, that's a very easy thing to pick out, but.
And I think it's interesting when you say like, hey, if you're making, you know, $100,000 from Coca-Cola, you know that there's probably more where that came from, right? But it's interesting to me, you know, speaking with a lot of agencies, I had a conversation that was just here recently that was similar to, you know, this conversation around, you know, oh, well, we're doing this work for this client, but, you know, they have their internal team and they have other agencies they work with for their other work. And I was just kind of taken aback by, I don't know how much acceptance there was for, well, this is our sliver of work and it's good and we appreciate it. We're grateful for it. And then you have an agency for 5, 10, 15, sometimes longer years have the same sort of level of relationship with a client, the same sort of volume, scope of work. Their prices don't really change because they kind of get pigeonholed into, you know, vendor for X, Y, and Z activities. And that vendor, that agency is always kind of afraid to push the envelope, to ask for more, to try to carve out other areas of the business. And part of me feels like, you know, are they just making an excuse for themselves? Like, I don't think they're lazy. I think that it's a combination maybe of, you know, just kind of fear of the unknown, telling themselves that, well, it's already, you know, that business is already accounted for. I'm a good person. I don't want to take that from somebody else. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure why there isn't sort of more action in those situations. There seems to be a lot of acceptance. Just, oh, that's the way it is.
No question. There's a lot of people that just kind of accept it. And I think that it's part of it is the acceptance, but the other part of it is they haven't really realized that they've accepted it because I'm sure if you were to continue on with that story, if you had pointed it out to them and said, well, why are you just taking that? You'll notice it, if you're on the phone, you'll notice a brief pause, but if you're in person with them, they'll be like, they didn't even think that they could, right? So if they think that, hey, should I go and get more money from them and should I get more business from them? And then they've accepted that, well, you know, I don't want to. That's one thing. But more often than not, I find that they haven't even done that. They haven't even thought that they could go get the more business, right? And I think that that's kind of what the really interesting part about it is that, well, you know, you don't have to be Oliver Twist with your please, sir, can I have some more type of thing. But I mean, you know, look, you guys are all in the agency world. You guys all you know, kind of do the same thing, and you guys are all kind of cut from the same cloth and think the same way. Here's what I'll tell you from outsider perspective, from the actual client perspective. If you're bad at it, I'm looking to fire you. If you're good at it, I'm looking to keep you. If you're good at it, I'm looking to keep you, and you come and tell me, hey, Ali, I did X, Y, and Z for you, but you know what? If I also did A, B, and C, can you imagine? Well, you got my effing interest, right? Think about it. It's one or the other, right? Either I'm looking to fire you, and if that's not the case, I'm looking to keep you. And if I'm looking to keep you, I'm going to listen to what you tell me, right? So it's not even a function of trying,
when you're thinking about this situation that you're talking about, you almost have sort of guardrails in your mind to keep your thoughts sort of disciplined. Whereas, I don't know, I think maybe there's less discipline around thought. So you kind of, you know, you don't really lock into, this is a choice of yes or no. And maybe you simplify things from a sales new business perspective, that kind of makes it easier, right? Then it's like, this isn't rocket science. This is my client has a choice to expand the relationship and receive more great things, or they have a choice to not do that, to not receive those great things. But when you put it that way, it sounds pretty simple.
It is just that simple. I mean, again, it's also how you
But
position
simple
it.
things are not, always easy. So
What was that Arkham's razor, right? It's the simplest hand solution is typically the right solution type of thing. So I mean, it's what it boils down to is frame that conversation correctly. Don't look like you're beggar hat in hand going in there, but then also don't come in there like, oh, look at this jerk, like he did 5 minutes of good work and then all of a sudden now he wants more money. So be diligent with it, right, and do that. But what I'm saying though is don't be afraid to have that conversation. And if you position it correctly, I think that it can be a very fruitful conversation and a conversation that is actually very advantageous to your client. And again, look, man, I think that the biggest thing that hurts agencies is not doing bad work. I think it's being complacent. Robby, did you read the book? What is it? Predatory Thinking by Dave Trott. A great book. So in the book, one of the things that he talks about is, I don't know when the book was written. I think it was something like 2012 or something like that. And in 2012, he said that it was something, and I'll get the number wrong, but forget the number. But basically, he said there was $100 billion. Let's call it $100 billion of ad money spent in the UK in 2012. Okay, let's just use that. Of that 100 billion, 3% was remembered favorably. So people liked the ads or whatever it was. 8% of it was remembered unfavorably, and people did not like the ads, or they said it was offensive, or whatever the case may be. 89% of it was not remembered at all, right? And so, I mean, a lot of agency owners are probably listening to this right now, being like, yeah, I know you got to push the envelope, blah, 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 blah. Shut up. Don't do that. What I'm trying to tell you is, so the messaging in there is, well, it's okay, push the envelope, because everyone's trying to hit that 3% to be remembered favorably, or worst case scenario, you end up in that 8% as remembered unfavorably, but that's still better than not being remembered at all. Well, think about what you're doing in your business, and don't think about advertising, but think about it in terms of business, right? You are, by being complacent, you're falling in that 89%. So what? You lose 8% of the, you go in there, you swing for the fences and say, hey, I'm going to do this for you, or we should do this. And they tell you to, hey, GTFO, get out of my office. I never want to talk to you again. Oh, well, c'est la vie, on to the next one, right? But, that 3% that are like, yeah, that makes total sense. Those are the ones. I don't know how long McCann's been in business, but they started off as just a small little, two little guys, and they just kept swinging the bat until eventually they became who they are. And so I think that, also they started eating up a lot of other agencies too. That helps. But that's that story for another time. But what I'm trying to say is that what it boils down to is, don't be afraid to ask your clients for more money and more business, and say, hey, look, and don't ask for it. Show them why it's going to help them, and explain to them why. And I hate the word value, not because there's anything wrong with the word value, but because every sales trainer and guru out there is give value, give value, give value. It's like, what does that even mean? Right? I don't understand what that means at this point. What I believe to be valuable, Robby, you may not care at all, right? So what I really want to do is I want to talk to you about what's in it for you, right? Okay, well, Robby, if you hire my agency to do X, Y, and Z for you, this is what it's going to do for you, right? Value is from my perspective. What's in it for you is from your perspective. So if we can make that little bit of a mental shift and start not talking about the value I provide. You don't care about what value I provide. First, you care about what's in it for you. Once that has been settled and resolved, and once that has that burning desire to see what's in it for me has been alleviated, then I want to see, okay, fine. Now let's have this conversation. So always talk about it from the client's perspective as to what's in it for them. You do that, you're on the right track.
Love it. All right. What do you think about talking through, more high level, just kind of a bunch of questions? I'll just throw them at you and see what you
rapid fire.
All right. A big issue for agencies is RFPs. Most agencies hate RFPs. They're not big fans. But a lot of agencies still participate with RFPs because it's just what you need to do, right? I know certain agencies that will get an RFP and reach back out to the client and say, and actually push them on the RFP and say, do I have to follow these rules, or am I going to be penalized if I don't? Are there areas, and they'll kind of get in there and try to, make their own opportunity out of the RFP. Others are going to follow it, to the letter of the law in terms of how they need to put in a response. But RFPs, it can be sort of a daunting, frustrating experience because there is so much involved. There's a lot of work. There's usually a dog and pony show. There's a lot of competition. And usually compared with maybe an inbound opportunity, that you get independent of an RFP, that inbound opportunity probably 9 times out of 10 is going to be a lot easier, from a sales perspective to walk through that process, maybe have less competition, so on and so forth, than a RFP was designed to create competition and create this whole process. But what are your thoughts, for agency principals that either, are participating in RFPs because, occasionally they do win and some RFPs are large, to the agency principals that are just burnt out and say, I don't want to do any more RFPs. I know agency principals that say, hey, we don't do RFPs. It's just something we won't mess with. What are your thoughts on kind of the RFP process and how agencies should handle RFPs? Should they be averse to them? Should they be maybe more accepting, but be a little more confident about pushing back? What do you think?
So a couple of things that run through my mind when I hear that. So first thing I'll say, and I'll leave this for now and we'll come back to it, but rules were meant to be broken. All right. Let's understand that. All right. These are arbitrary rules that some pencil pusher put in place, and they're meant to be broken. Especially when
RFPs honestly feel like whoever developed it grabbed a template online, and they don't even really know. We've actually helped our clients, rework RFPs or abandon RFPs, because oftentimes I'll talk on the brand side and the marketing side, and they'll put together an RFP and they don't even really know what it is. It's like, it's done.
It answered the questions of everything that the RFP asked, but it still doesn't speak to what's going to happen, right? Or what the plan is, or et cetera. So, take them with a grain of salt. So I'll say this, there's two typical situations. There might be a third or fourth situation, but two typical situations when I hear someone says, I don't respond to RFPs. Number one, either I guess maybe three. And the first one is you're just lazy, right? And let's be honest, they're just lazy and they don't want to deal with it, right? And maybe their business is doing well, maybe it's not, who knows, right? But that is a likely.
You're right, because I was thinking too, we were talking earlier about simple, easy. If an RFP is in front of you, it's still an opportunity. Maybe it's how you're looking at the RFP, not the RFP itself. Maybe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you never just want to throw something in for I'll throw my hat in the ring, because that will hurt you down the line, right? If you're going to do something, do it right, and always put your best foot forward, type of thing, right? So that's I can't help lazy. You want to be lazy? God bless you. Good luck. But I ain't getting involved, type of thing, right? Hey, this is America. You want to run your business in the ground? Be my guest, right? No one's going to force you to do anything. So that's that. Number two, I think that the other type of person that you run into that says I don't respond to RFPs is just a total badass, right? Like, I do great work. I do, I know what I'm doing. My clients effing love me, and I've got more money or more business coming at me than I can handle. I ain't replying to your RFP. You don't respect my process. Blah 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 blah. Look, man, I love that. I think that's great if you are or can be that. But let's be honest, 99% of agency owners are not that. Okay, and that's not a bad thing, right? If you can
but they're lying to themselves a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? They'll tell themselves whatever, but there are some people that are just great, do great work, and they don't need to respond to RFPs. And I think that the third type of person that you run into that does not want to do RFPs or doesn't respond to RFPs is that what you mentioned, burned out. Right? Like, oh man, I've responded to so many. I've spent so much money and time, energy, and effort on RFPs. And I'm at a point where I can't keep replying to these because it's actually hurting my business. Yeah. Right? So here's
real cost involved, right? When you respond to an RFP, depending on the level of RFP and pitch as well. I've seen agencies easily at the baseline, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, and that could even be hard costs, but a lot of time is poured into it. So it's an expensive endeavor.
Sometimes and you'll end up in a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation where I don't have enough money to respond to this RFP, but I also don't have enough money to make payroll to not win this deal. Right. Yeah, you're absolutely. So I think that my answer, and then those are the people that don't respond. And then there's people that do respond. And then they, you get all types of, wacky stuff, right? People that just submit a proposal, which I'm not necessarily opposed to. If you are that badass or that badass person that can get away with it type of thing. But I mean, if you're just doing it just to be funny, I mean, probably not going to win it. And you're probably not going to get invited again type of thing also, right? So don't shoot yourself in the foot. So, I mean, that can work, can also hurt you too type of things.
So what I hear you saying is, sounds like 9 times out of 10, it's probably a good idea to at least look at the RFP, review it, make sure it's a lot, unless you are, just creme de la creme, you really don't need new business. Like a lot of people, but you really, really don't need new business. At least look at it, see if there's alignment, see if it's a good project. Go through that aspect. Go do that upfront homework before you just say, I'm not going to worry about this because of maybe aversion to, you've had bad previous RFP experiences or whatever. What about, I had an interesting experience back in the day working with an agency in Tampa, Florida, and we put together a fair amount of pitches while I was there, and some of those being really digital-centric pitches that I was leading. One of the things that was interesting to me was, a lot of people don't like sales or they're afraid of sales. Same thing applies to pitching, certainly when you're getting up in front of a client, a group of people and giving a presentation and, there's a little bit of showmanship involved, particularly in the agency world. One of the things that I noticed in preparing for pitches was instead of turning it into this like grueling task, this labor intensive, not a labor of love, more labor intensive, lottery play is I think how a lot of people sort of perceive the activity. It's just not a fun experience. And I think, so much has to do with, human beings are running all of this, right? So one of the strategies that I employed at that time was to make the pitching process fun. And so, we would stay later. I remember staying later on a Thursday night or a Friday night to 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, but we didn't just sit down at our desks and hammer away. Like we were in front of the whiteboard. We were brainstorming for 45 minutes and then we were, playing ping pong for 10 minutes and, just chatting. And then we would go back to working, but it was like turned into a pitch party is what I used to call it. And we'd bring in food and everything. I know agencies will do that to, support that process. What do you think, about that? Not only pitching, but other maybe, more arduous aspects or more scary, aspects of sales biz dev. Like, is it a good idea to make it fun? How you package it for, even your employees, your agency employees that are going to be putting some of that labor together is how you kind of look at it. Does that matter?
No question. I think that the most important thing that, I think I don't even know who I stole this from, but I basically, what I always say is, and this is not original, but basically what I always say is closing is a transfer enthusiasm, right? If I can transfer the same amount of enthusiasm I have about my solution over to you, I have a much higher likelihood of closing you and getting you to accept that deal or accept those conditions and say, yes, I want to move forward. So if you yourself don't embody that enthusiasm or are not excited about it, there ain't no hope in hell that you're going to be able to get this person excited about it as well, right? So yes, absolutely, no question. Make it fun, make it exciting. Try to do that. And I love the idea of pitch party and keeping it lively and on your feet, because as soon as your blood stops flowing and you get into that boring typing situation, your ideas get worse and stale, and then it's harder to pitch them and get excited about them. And all the stuff that you've done that you hated in order to even get there, and now you're just in front of the client. You're just like, I just want to get this over with, right? And that shows in your pitch. So I think so I love all that. The other thing that I would also add to that was template as much as you can. Don't template your ideas, because then you're gonna be a man with a hammer syndrome, right? A man with a hammer to every problem to a man with a hammer looks like a nail, right? So you're gonna be pitching the same thing over and over again. So don't template your ideas, but all the other stuff that you are
approach, your process. Your culture or whatever it is that you're hitting on. Yeah.
All those things, template them and try and streamline that as much as possible. Because if you do that, I think that will certainly help you. And so you don't have to do those boring menial tasks over and over again that are repetitive, and you can just strictly focus on the stuff that's fun, package that in. And of course, you know, man, at the end of the day, this is work. So I mean, if you're going to try and, you know, just only have fun, I mean, you're in for a little bit of a long road. But I think that, you know, as much as you can make fun, try to make fun. As much as that is boring and monotonous and repetitive work, template it. But don't template your ideas, because that won't help. That'll actually just hurt. And let the ideas be what come from as a result of a proper process of your pitch parties, of other things that you do. So I totally agree with you.
Love it. So we have I don't know, about 5 or 10 minutes, and I wanted to kind of wrap up with I don't know, maybe a more fun question to consider for us, right? And so let's say we have an agency that is following your advice. You know, they've documented and analyzed their sales, their biz dev activities. They have a clear sense of what's working, what isn't working, and they're ready to take that next step. When you think of sort of two components of being successful in sales, you know, might be process, right? Another one might be personality. So I'm thinking of an agency, again, that maybe doesn't have a salesperson yet, or somebody that's dedicated to new biz. What advice can you give to an agency principal that is going to do what we talked about today, and they're serious about their new biz, they're serious about, you know, really a fresh start, Q4, Q1 of 2018, whatever it might be, right? They're excited. How do you get an agency principal? How do you sort of help themselves from the personality perspective? How can they become more excited, more amped up? I know for me, when whether it's prospecting, whether it's, you know, closing somebody on the phone, making a pitch, if I'm in a you know, higher level of energy and I'm more passionate about it, and generally there's things that I can do to kind of spur that on, I'm more successful. It's more contagious. If I see, you know, people trying to sell or present that are just flat or emotionless, it doesn't work very well. So can you give some advice to the agency principal that says, you know what, I'm documenting stuff, I'm going to be attacking sales and biz dev with renowned fervor, but what I really need is kind of a kick in the pants. How do I just psych myself up more? How do I feel more confident? How do I just get more excited going into a pitch instead of dreading it? Are there any strategies for that to amp yourself up?
The most, the best advice I can give.
You do, Ali, to amp yourself up.
We want to keep this PG. So I think that, you know, I think when you're in person, it can be easier than when you're on the phone or on you know, kind of on a you know, on a video conference or whatever the case may be. One of the most important things that I tell people is, if you're on the phone, stand. Your voice projects differently. You have a lot more energy that you can cultivate.
Voice too.
Absolutely. One of my and it's unbelievable. And actually, you know him too. One of my clients runs an agency, and I sat on a bunch of pitches with him on his call, and the client was complaining about being able to hear him or not. He's like, hang on. And he said, can you hear me better now? Instantly, his voice was completely different. She said, yeah. They went through, and, you know, the conversation went as it needed to. I said, hey, I won't say the client's name, but I said, hey, after when we were debriefing, I said, what happened? What did you do differently? He said, oh, I just stood up and I walked over to the window where it was better reception. I said, you do realize, okay.
The reception.
Yeah, just by standing, he was up like 5 tones with excitement, authority, personality in general. I said, hey, like, you know, maybe you should be standing for all of your phone calls. I thought I told you to do that. He's like, yeah, but, you know, and then, you know, you get the people have a habit of going back to doing what was most comfortable, or what they've done for the longest time, even if it's not comfortable or even if it's not good for them. So, you know, now he's making a concerted effort to try and stand for all of his conversations. So I think that that's one of the most important things. And you know, one of the things that I do to definitely keep myself focused, because after a while, you know, I'm not going to lie. Look, man, like I hear the same problems over and over again. And sometimes it's just, you know, you want to give these founders a shake and say, stop hurting yourself. And obviously you can't do that to that extent. But sometimes what I tell myself why I'm doing this, right? I know my why. I don't listen to everything he says, but Grant Cardone, one of the things that he does say is there, and I don't know if I necessarily believe this wholeheartedly, but one of the things that he says that definitely gets me is there's no such thing as burnout. There's a loss of passion. So it's not that you're burning out. You've lost your passion. You've lost your purpose. You've lost your why. And I truly believe that, yeah, and whether it's a vacation that you need to take on a yearly basis, or plan for that vacation that you want to go towards, have your why, understand that. I mean, I tell everybody all the time, right? Like my wife and I were going to go and live in Costa Rica in an adult fat camp for 3 weeks next summer, right? It's not a fat camp. It's like one of those holistic things. I just call it a fat camp because it's funny. But anyway, so that's what I keep telling people. My number is 3.4 billion. I want to drive a Lamborghini. I tell people these things not because one day I will hit them, but that's one way that I'm throwing the bar out there that now I have to chase, that I have to do, and because I'm making mention of it, I'm being held accountable to it. So understand your why, but don't just keep it private. Share it with people, and really own it, and try and constantly strive for it. And I think that is the biggest personal shift that you can make, is understanding your why and being held accountable to it. Because otherwise, you know what, if we continue to live in our head, we're always going to become complacent and slowly start to take the foot off the pedal. Because I mean, ultimately, unless you've got really ostentatious tastes, a few $100,000 a year can, really support a very nice lifestyle. And after a while, you're just like, do I really want to keep doing this? Or you know what I mean? Like, so
you get to a certain amount of money even, and the return as far as happiness is nominal after a certain point, because people are continuing maybe to chase more and more and more, but really it's kind of reflecting that they don't have a purpose, they don't have a why, there is no end game, and so they're always chasing for kind of the next thing, never really feeling that sense of satisfaction or contentedness. I find it very interesting, like we're talking about sales, talking about biz dev and programs, and what to do on the agency level, but also really talking about how important it is on a personal level to understand your why, as much as it might be to understand your agency positioning on that level, right? Because everything does stem from people, from our heads, from the thoughts that we tell ourselves, from the things that we justify. I think a lot of sales or lack thereof comes from a lot of excuses that we make for ourselves and justifications that we make for ourselves. And I think it's a great point what you said about when I met you in person, you were big on, hey, these are my goals. And I put it out there. I was impressed by that, because I think a lot of people, you're pretty, maybe I'll call you a flamboyant person, right? You're out there. I mean, you're going to be, you have that shtick about you. There's people that aren't as, active and everything. But I think a lot of people don't share big goals in particular because they're scared, because they don't want to put it in the public domain. They don't want to risk, succeeding but not really getting to what they want to be, and having other people know that they're unsuccessful, that they're not meeting their goals. Like there's whole mind component going on, and it's fascinating to hear us kind of wrap up a conversation about sales on a company level, and then hear that kind of whittle down to the headspace of the principal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can sit here and give you all the tools and tactics, and okay, this is what you do when he does this, and this is what you do. But I mean, all that is for naught if you don't understand your purpose and you don't understand why you're doing it. And again, remember, this is not about making more money. I mean, hey, don't get me wrong. Like I said, right? If you're not making money, what are you doing? Type of thing. But this is also about loving what you do and enjoying it on a day-to-day basis, right? If you're not making money, you're probably not enjoying it. But even if you're making money, that doesn't guarantee the happiness. So I think that once you get to a certain level of I'm engaging in all these activities. We've got a great process now. I'm making money and we're sustaining, but do I really want to keep going with it? You now have the tools and techniques to be able to go and get the right types of clients, to work on the right types of projects, and rather than just taking anything that comes in, right? If you have a very strong moral compass, and these are the types of clients that I do not want to work with, but those are the only clients that are coming to you, and sometimes you have to sacrifice your principles in order to go and work with them. If you get really good at your biz dev, now you don't have to go and work with those clients. You can say no. And sometimes, again, remember, it's not just about making money. Yes, you're making money, but you now have this, you can stand chest out.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great point, because I know agencies that, don't necessarily want to make more money, but they would love to have better clients. But you still need quantity to get quality. You still need the more opportunities you have, the more opportunity you have to have the freedom to pick and choose what's going to work for your agency. If money isn't the bottom line, maybe quality of life is, or the quality of life, or, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. I mean, if you've got your process dialed in and you know exactly what you're doing, then remember the only deals you're going to be working on are the ones that you brought in yourself, meaning you went and sought them out, meaning that's what you wanted to work on, right? So you're not going to go and seek out deals that now I got to deal with this client. No, the clients that you deal with should be fun. It should be challenging. It should be exciting, and that's really what it boils down into. Is we and going back to the point that you said about some people are too shy, let's call it, to share all of their personal goals. I'm not saying you have to keep tweeting about it. Like I don't tweet 3.4 billion. Yeah. I don't do that on a daily basis, but what I have a close.
Sure. I got a text from you yesterday. It said 0.1% of my goal achieved. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to get that from me. But what I am saying though, is at the end of the day, you should surround yourself around other people, like-minded individuals that want you to do better. Because understand, most of the people in your life probably don't want you to do very well, right? And that's just a fact of life that you need to understand. Most people are not positive people. So you need to really seek out those people that are going to push you forward, that are going to be happy for your success, that you do feel comfortable sharing your goals with. Because if you don't feel comfortable sharing your goals with these people, those are also probably the people that are holding you back from it. So seek out those right people, mentors, and sometimes even a mentee.
We're having now. I mean, we have a conversation like this, which hopefully can help other people, but there's an energy that we're transferring as a result of this conversation, even more excitement, motivation around biz dev and what we're talking about and how real it is. So
well, I mean, there's been countless times, Robby. I mean, I've reached out to you for help and said, how should I do this? What should I do here? I mean, you've been nothing but a great support for me. So by the way, I do thank you for that. But I mean, that's what it's all about is reaching out to other people that know your goals, know your aspirations, that can help you at a time of need, or just simply just someone that you can bounce ideas off of. And that's what's going to keep your purpose going, rather than, should I just put my resume out there? Or, what am I even doing this for? I missed my kid's soccer game, yada, yada, yada. I mean, it's endless, right? I mean, there's 100 reasons. If you love something, you only need one reason to do it. And that's the reason, because you love it. And if you don't love something, you'll find a million excuses not to do it. So.
Love it. Let's end on that. Ali, it was a great conversation. Hopefully we can do another one of these again soon.
For sure, brother.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
Take care.